That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
We are at a turning point in Dynasty. I mean, we had the historic 2017 NFL draft class come through, change the entire landscape of the running back position. And now I want to plant the flag, say they're on their way out. I mean, we were all ready, willing to rank guys like Cam Akers and Najee Harris over those players like Alvin Kamara and Dalvin Cook in Dynasty formats. We were all ready to rank them higher than the veteran running backs last offseason. And now if you go over there to Patreon right now, you pull up our updated Dynasty rankings, you are going to see that we are going to be lower on veteran running backs on their second contracts, guys like Kamara, Dalvin, Zeke, Henry, Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley. Actually, I'm lying to you. There's going to be about 2 or 3 guys in that list I actually think you can hold on to, but a couple other names we need to be going through and looking to sell high. Of course, we're going to be talking about exactly why I am selling, who I think we should be just willing to bite the bullet and maybe hold on to for a little bit longer. But before we get into anything, please go down there, drop that like, leave a comment letting me know why I am so stupid. Tell me anything that I said wrong down there in the comment section. Not only can you put myself in my place, but you can also go through and allow everybody else watching this video maybe a little bit of a smarter take on this thing. But nonetheless, let's go through. Let's dive into this. And we actually kind of briefly covered this in a video recently released on this channel talking about the most common mistakes in Dynasty Fantasy Football, where we discussed holding on to these veteran running backs a little too long. And I mean, we went through, we identified those quarterbacks in Superflex leagues and even wide receivers as players that I'm willing to hold on to for a little bit longer. I'm willing to be late to the party on selling those guys like DeAndre Hopkins, hoping we can find the next Larry Fitzgerald. Whereas at the running back position, it's going to be the exact opposite. And I'm going to be the guy looking to go through and maybe sell a year too early, because we need to address a couple things here. A, the career type of a running back and how that changes as he progresses through his NFL career. B, what drives fantasy value at the running back position. And C, a natural dynasty value regardless of the production that you are seeing or not. And now, first off, let's just dive into the career arc of these running backs, and let's talk about early career production versus late career production. Because y'all know, I mean, last rookie draft season, when everybody was going through and drafting Jamar Chase, Kyle Pitts, I mean, instead, we were saying, you know what? Yeah, Kyle Pitts, he's going to be a fantastic tight end in Dynasty. He will eventually be the #1 tight end in fantasy, but there's no reason to draft him going into his rookie draft because, historically speaking, those rookie tight ends don't produce. So instead, please take Najee Harris, take the rookie season production of Najee Harris, put that immediately into your starting lineup, have a running back 1, and then after that rookie season, when you already capitalized on that current production, then go through and sell Najee Harris for Kyle Pitts. That way you can capitalize on the long-term value of Kyle Pitts in the Dynasty. And why were we looking to do that? It's because those rookie running backs, they come in, they see immediate opportunity. Not only do they see immediate opportunity, but really with those running backs, it's different than wide receiver. It's different than quarterback. It's different than even tight end, because at running back, so much of the game is just dictated by how fast can you hit this hole? Can you hit this hole? Can you move up and down the field? At a blink of the eye, hopefully being able to slip through to the defensive line. It's so much predicated on, do you have the juice? That's why you see Adrian Peterson trying to make a comeback this season. And I know this is an outlier level example. I understand that. But that's why you see those veteran running backs trying to come in, and they simply cannot get the job done, because if they don't have that athleticism, it doesn't really matter what's provided for them. There's no potential for that big play down the field. So they really have no upside in fantasy. So at running back, you need athleticism, you need explosion that's going to be there immediately when those running backs get to the NFL. You don't really have to develop, a ton of technique, whereas at tight end, you have to learn how to go through and you have to learn how to be a blocker, and you have to learn how to be able to develop your routes and fit into an offensive system. It's a completely different game. But because of this, these running backs, they get large workloads at the beginning of their careers, which maybe shortens just the runway that you have a little bit later on. And obviously, they're going to be a little less athletic once you get to 27, 28 years old than you were at 22. And we have some real data to actually go through and look at this with. Now, of course, everybody knows by now, if you've been playing in Dynasty Fantasy Football for a very long time, I mean, you naturally see those running backs as they go and just get older every offseason. It doesn't matter what they did the previous year. It doesn't matter if Derrick Henry came out and Derrick Henry was the running back 1 overall in fantasy on a points per game basis, because the next offseason, when he's 28 years old and not 27, even though he came out and he had the best season of his career, he is still going to be valued less than he was previously. So we also know with the dynasty market that it doesn't matter if you're investing into one of these assets on the decline. You are literally buying into just a player and you're saying, can we get enough production from him right now? You're not investing into someone that can see his value increase. And if you're looking at the age that these running backs produce, let's go through and let's look at the past 5 years. I think 5 years is a good example of just a recent timeline of what you may be able to expect with running back production. And what we did is we went through and we looked at the top 12 running backs by finish on a year-to-year basis. And I usually adjust everything for per game numbers, except this one study, we decided to instead look at season totals. Now, season totals are really skewed for players that just can manage to stay healthy all 16 games, can manage to stay healthy now all 17 games. And a lot of times, if you see a random injury, say, like, I don't want to use Saquon Barkley as an example. Let's say like Austin Eckler in 2020, where he missed the majority of the year. That's not necessarily based on Austin Eckler's ability. That's more so based on random chance than anything. To hold that against a player, it maybe is a little bit unfair. Well, in this case, I don't necessarily think that's true, because I think a big reason that you're going through and avoiding these older running backs is because they represent a higher case for injury. They represent more injury risk than you would see with a rookie or a second-year player. So to go through and look at this by season, this past year, you had one 27-year-old running back cracking the top 12. That was Derrick Henry, and that's a per game. I'm sorry, that's not a per game number. That's a total number. So that shows you how dominant Derrick Henry was on a per game basis. And I'm recording this right now before week 15 kicks off. Okay. So just complete transparency. You're probably seeing this 10 days afterwards or so, but this is a good enough sample where we can definitely be using this. So one running back that was 27, 7 running backs that were 26. You're going to see this trend because that 2017 class was historic. You have a 25-year-old, a 23-year-old, and two 22-year-olds. So essentially, you have a 27-year-old running back in Derrick Henry as the oldest guy that's able to get into the top 12. And then in 2020, the oldest players that were able to crack the top 12, again, Derrick Henry got on that list. But I mean, you had no players that were 27 finishing the top 12 in 2020. You had 4 players that were 25. You had 2 players that were 26. You had a 24-year-old, a 23-year-old. You had 2 players that were 22 and 2 players that were 21. So you're kind of giving an idea that this is a young man's game. And in 2019, you get Mark Ingram cracking it. So you get a 29-year-old player, a 25-year-old player. So no players that are 28, 27, 26. You get a lot of 24-year-olds. You get a lot of 23-year-olds. You can get a 22-year-old as well. So you're seeing that age go down even more so. In 2018, the oldest player to crack it was 26 years old. And you have a lot of guys that are 22, a lot of guys that are 23. And in 2017, you had one 29-year-old. You had 2 27-year-olds. So this is going to be the oldest year that you're finding. And then going to 2016, I maybe misspoke. This is also a year where you get someone that's 33. I believe that was Frank Gore, a 29-year-old and a 28-year-old as well. But I mean, you still get 24, 24, 23, 23, 22, 22, 21. So this kind of just goes through and illustrates that there's a clear number that is a fall off at the running back position historically. That number is 27 years old. That's the number that I think that we should be going through and looking to get out on these running backs. Now, I could be wrong with this. I would love to know your opinion in the comment section below. But I mean, based on speculation, I think there are a couple of reasons for this 27-year-old fall off. And that's if you go through and if you look historically, what happens with these running backs is once they get to their second contract, they maybe don't necessarily have the juice that they did their rookie year, or I mean, they don't have the juice that they did the first year that they signed that contract. And usually you get them falling off 2 to 3 years into that second deal. Now, why that's significant is because NFL contracts, they're fake. We see this every single offseason. You see a wide receiver like Amari Cooper going and signing for $100 million. Then you pull up the guaranteed money and go, this isn't a $100 million contract. I'd be surprised if he plays this out. And it's way more prevalent with the running backs Because with running backs, what will happen is you see a running back that's, say, guaranteed $2 million on a deal, but I mean, the salary, if he remains on that team, is going to be closer to $12 million. Now, a perfect example of this is going and looking at a running back that I am not expecting to get cut, but you can see this in his contract that he signed his second deal in Derrick Henry. As we've discussed, Derrick Henry, I mean, one of, if not the best running backs in the NFL, but you go through and you look at this contract. So yes, he signs a $50 million contract, right? A $15 million contract where he's supposed to be getting paid, I mean, $15.5 million all the way through 2023. Where, I mean, the dead cap on this deal, if you're actually looking at 2022, he's guaranteed $6 million. You would assume that this is definitely going to be a running back brought back. They're not going to want to save $9 million by cutting Derrick Henry. But once you get to 2023, if Derrick Henry has another injury-riddled season, what happens when they can save $12.5 million by looking to move on from him? So historically speaking, those running backs that sign their veteran deals, a lot of these contracts are structured in a way where they're fake contracts. They're not real. Like, let me go through and let's pull up the Joe Mixon contract, for instance, because this is another player that we're going to discuss later in this video. So Joe Mixon is another guy. He signed a $48 million deal with the Cincinnati Bengals. But is that a real contract? No, it's not. Where if you're looking at this upcoming season in 2022, yes, they're going to be looking to keep him. He's owed $11 million and 8.5 of that is guaranteed. They're not going to cut him to save $3 million. But going to when he's going to be 28 years old, they're going to owe him about $13.5 million, and he's only guaranteed $2.5. So by the time he gets there, by the time that, I mean, they can save $10 million by going through and moving on from him, you better believe that's going to be something that they look to explore. We've seen this example time and time again with players like David Johnson, players like Le'Veon Bell, players like Devontae Freeman, players like Todd Gurley. I know Todd Gurley, arthritis. I know it's a little bit of a different example, but still, nonetheless, they're perfect examples of running backs that were at the very top in fantasy, and they're just falling off the face of the earth by the time they get to 27 years old and are going into year 2, year 3 of their second contracts. And that's why I'm bringing up this class of 2017 running backs, because this 2017 class of running backs signed their extensions not coming into this season, but going into last season. So if you're projecting out to 2022, they'll be playing their third season of their second contracts, which really for a lot of these players will be the last time that they have guaranteed money. So to go through and look at these players on a list by list basis, let's start it off with, a player that, just crushed this past season. Austin Eckler. And let's talk about a realistic viewpoint that we can have with Austin Eckler going forward. Now, the first thing I want to say with Eckler is, of course, this is a running back that was fantastic. He was, arguably the running back 2 in fantasy this season, if you're accounting for the injury to Derrick Henry. Now, with Austin Eckler, if you're looking at his contract, it's a little interesting because his contract, is not nearly as expensive as most of these other running backs, where, he is only signing a $24 million deal and 15 of it's guaranteed. So you're looking at the Austin Eckler contract and you're saying, well, you know what? He's definitely locked in for 2022. They're not cutting him to save $3.5 million. And he's probably locked into 2023 as well, because they'd only save about $6 million if they decided to move on. And another reason that I'm going to be a little bit more willing to just hold on to a player like Austin Eckler is based on how he wins. He's not a running back like Ezekiel Elliott that needs to go out there and needs to see 300 plus touches in a season to be effective. Instead, with Austin Eckler, he's more so the Aaron Jones type prototype, where he's just going to be the player that's going to get targets out of the backfield and he's going to get those high value looks in the red zone. And that's what's going to drive the majority of his fantasy value. So I'd be fine looking to hold on to someone like Austin Eckler. Now, I do have some concerns, and of course, every player is available for the right price. Looking at Austin Eckler coming into this next season, this will be a running back that is pushing it. He is going to be 27 years old going into next year, which, of course, I'm a little bit concerned with. I don't want to act like that's a perfectly fine number with Eckler when that's historically when we've seen this drop off. But with Eckler, based on the fact that he is not looking to handle the ball 300 plus times, I would be a little bit more fine holding on to him than I would some of these other running backs. And that leads us right into our next guy in Dalvin Cook. Now, Dalvin Cook, obviously, in the same draft class, obviously, with Dalvin Cook here, going to be 27 years old as well next season. And with Dalvin, he is, a little bit of a different running back. He's not the Austin Eckler. He is not the Alvin Kamara. Dalvin Cook, he needs to see the Ezekiel Elliott level workload for him to be very effective in fantasy. Now, if you're looking at that Dalvin Cook contract, this is a running back that signed a pretty large one. So he signed a $63 million deal. Keep that in mind. But to go through and look at this contract, really, it's not anything it seems to be. I mean, the dead cap really just takes a hit in 2024, where it looks like you're going to 100% he's going to be on the roster next year. Of course. I mean, people are laughing if I would say that Dalvin Cook's not going to be on the team. They're not cutting him to save $3 million. But let's say Dalvin Cook has another season, just like he has had throughout his entire NFL career, riddled by injuries, and you see the efficiency fall off, similar to what you had with Ezekiel Elliott this season. But with Dalvin, he has a longer injury history. Then the following year, they could decide to save $8 million by moving on from Dalvin Cook. And then in 2024, I mean, I can almost guarantee you Dalvin Cook's not going to be on the roster, because they can go through and they can save $12.5 million rather than going through and paying a 29-year-old running back. So the player like Dalvin Cook, I'm viewing him as someone that at this point is almost season to season. I would say that you have 2 more years with Dalvin Cook, but historically speaking, when you're looking at this running back production, it does fall off once you get to that 27, 28-year-old range. So I'll be a little bit worried about Dalvin Cook here based on the prototype that he is, based on the injuries that he has suffered as well. And now let's go over to Alvin Kamara, someone that we've been bringing up just slightly here. And with Kamara, this is a running back that we're bringing him up because he wins with his role in the receiving game. He's not Ezekiel Elliott. He doesn't need to see a massive workload. But with Alvin Kamara, if you're looking at this contract, I mean, yes, he signs a $75 million deal. It's completely front-loaded, where you're looking at the guaranteed money. This next season is the last year that he really has any guaranteed money left. I would say that Kamara is in a very similar boat to Dalvin Cook, where he's probably going to be on this team in 2022 and 2023. Even if, I mean, in 2022, say he sees a Cam Akers type injury, he tears his Achilles, well, he's done. They're cutting him. They're going to save $8 million in that instance. And I'm not saying this is likely, but I'm saying, are you really willing to spend a second-round dynasty startup pick on this profile of a running back? Because then going into 2024, I can guarantee you, they're probably going to at least be considering moving on from him. There'll be a running back. He'll be a running back that they can save $12 million if they decide to move on. And in 2025, there's a 0% chance he's on the roster. They'd save $25 million by moving on from him. And now our next running back I want to bring up here will be someone that we talked about previously. Derrick Henry, someone that I am begging you, please go through, trade Derrick Henry and a second round pick. Go try to get Javonte Williams instead. Go trade Derrick Henry and throw in a wide receiver like Chase Claypool. Try to get to DeAndre Swift. Here with Derrick Henry, not only is he going to be 28 years old, but he has had a massive workload, to say the least. And in 2022, this is a team that, yes, they're most likely going to be bringing him back. I'd be surprised if they decide to move on from him and save $9 million. But the following season in 2023, when Derrick Henry is going to be a 29-year-old running back and they can save $12 million, I'm viewing Derrick Henry as a player that has one more year in the situation that you're used to. And when he's 29 years old, I think that fall off is going to be coming very early on. Now let's go to another running back that obviously, has had a very large workload as of late. And at the time of this recording, Ezekiel Elliott has been pretty damn bad over the past month. Now, if you're looking at that Ezekiel Elliott contract, this is a running back that is guaranteed for 2022. He has more money on the dead cap than he actually has just with his regular cap hit. The following season, they could only save $5 million from moving on from him. So honestly, Ezekiel Elliott, from a contract standpoint, is in a little bit of a better situation than Derrick Henry. Ezekiel Elliott is also younger than Derrick Henry at the same time. So even though Zeke's seemingly seen the fall off where Derrick Henry has not, I would be a little bit more willing to hold on to Ezekiel Elliott compared to Derrick Henry. And then going over to another player, this is going to be a difficult thing to bring up because he has cost so many people their fantasy football titles over the past 2 years, and this is Christian McCaffrey. And I've heard a lot of people coming out talking about the fact that maybe Christian McCaffrey signed his massive deal and now he has no interest in playing football anymore. I understand it. I don't necessarily think that's fair to say. Now, with Christian McCaffrey, I think what's appealing about him is even if this coaching staff wanted to change the role just slightly for CMC this upcoming season, based on the injury struggles that he's had, he can still be very effective in fantasy by just catching the ball. He doesn't have to be Derrick Henry. He doesn't have to be Ezekiel Elliott. He doesn't have to be Dalvin Cook. He doesn't have to see 300+ touches in a season to be effective from a fantasy football standpoint. Now, yes, if you want to get the 29 points per game Christian McCaffrey, that's the workload that I'll have to see, but I think that Christian McCaffrey is long in the past. looking at the guaranteed money, I mean, he is a lock for the roster this upcoming season, more dead cap than he has on the cap hit. And then the following season, they could only save $5 million for moving on from him. He's a lock for the next 2 years at least. And in 2024, this is another running back that has $7 million guaranteed at 28 years old. So he's younger than every other running back on this list. He has a better contract than every other running back on this list. Now, I know the injuries have caught up to him. Trust me, I am frustrated with everybody else here. But I think Christian McCaffrey is actually a running back that instead of going through and looking to panic sell on, I would be a lot more willing to panic sell on Dalvin Cook and Derrick Henry than I would be with Christian McCaffrey, as they're older. Not only are they older, but they have worse contracts at the same time. And all these running backs have been dealing with injuries as of late, although Christian McCaffrey obviously a little more serious. And of course, thank you all so much for being a part of the flock and supporting the channel. If you have not done so already, go down there, drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel only if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football. Go down to the comment section, let me know how stupid I am. And yeah, that's all I got for you. Really hope you have a great day and really hope we get to see you out with the video tomorrow.